Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Ben. I'm a self-taught web developer who went from zero to paid full stack in 8 months studying via the Odin project. And in today's walk and talk, I want to go over some interview questions that I recently received for a mid-level Ruby on Rails engineer position for an American company. And just to give you some perspective on what kind of questions this company was asking. It's a mid-sized company. Got, I don't know, between 100 and 150 engineers working there. And you thought you might be interested in knowing some of the questions and some of my responses, whether good or bad. So yeah, it started off, there were two people interviewing. It was a staff engineer and an engineering manager. And the first question just started off quite simple, like tell us about a project that you've worked on recently. So I just went over actually on my open source pet rescue project. I thought was kind of the most expansive ongoing project that I've had in my kind of resume. It's had almost 100 contributors on it, so I think it's one that's very worth talking about in interviews. And they were also impressed by that project, which is good. Second question was around tell us about a project that you're proud of. And again, I used that project again, and they were fine with that because, it makes sense. It is a decent project. Third question was related to describe a time we've had challenges with a colleague at work and what you did to go about it. I just brought up a case where, for example, there's a particular colleague who's very, detail-oriented on pull requests that tends to slow things down even when you're trying to get things out. So it's managing that balance between perfection and shipping. And generally you just want to have a chat with these types of people and understand where they're coming from and have a discussion around the merits, pros and cons of certain approaches. And if necessary, you can always get a third party involved to kind of be a tiebreaker on what decision you might want to take. Next question was around what do I think makes a good developer? And for this, I thought, you really got to echo the qualities of someone who's, maintains technical knowledge, capacity, always learning, hungry for learning, appetite for learning is really important. Someone who's humble, someone who's willing to take feedback, someone who's willing to be open to discussion, someone who's a good communicator. Because oftentimes, especially if you're working asynchronously, you got to write communications with your colleagues around the world in different hours. So I thought these were kind of the main traits that I'd want to capture in a good developer. And then they moved on to some more technical questions. I guess there was one more. It's not that technical, but it was kind of like semi-technical. It is describe what a database is to an 8-year-old. And I just use the example of pets, because kids love pets, and just saying, hey, you want to store a load of information. If you know what Microsoft Excel looks like, all these spreadsheets, well, each of them could be a table, and each one, you got a table for dogs, and each column could have, name, favorite food, age, and all the rest of it. And then you can have many rows, and each row represents a dog, and you got a unique ID. And they asked me, how would you help them understand it? And drawing it out on a piece of paper would really help with that too. And yeah, I think that was a pretty straightforward answer for that question. Next question, I completely flubbed. It was really hard, just on the spot. It was tell us about a time that you'd had to address scalability in a project. And the example I gave was just deciding on whether or not to execute n+1 queries in the view versus loading thousands and thousands of records in a collection at once which is usually what you do when you don't want to have n+1 queries. But given it was page native views, it made sense to have n+1 queries. It would actually be more efficient. And we just made sure that there were no issues, checking it manually in production. But that one I flubbed. My phone went off twice. For some reason, my phone was ringing. My phone rarely ever rings, and it just happened to ring right there. And my mind went blank, having to deal with this thing twice going off. My fault for not having my phone on mute. Maybe that would be a learning point for you guys. It's an obvious one, right? But I just didn't turn it off. So That one was tough, but luckily I gave them enough information that they knew what I was saying, and the staff engineer was like, let me just get this straight. So XYZ is what happened, and I was like, yes, that's exactly what I meant to say, and kind of moved on from there. The next technical question was, you have a shop and you have product. A shop has many products, and a product can belong to many shops. How would you map that relationship? So I just said the simplest way off the top of my head is through a through table. It's like a shop can have many products through shop products, and vice versa. So that one was straightforward. And then the last technical question was, you want to rename a column in production, but you want to do it in a way that is not going to cause any issues with the data in production. So how would you go about doing that? And I got like, let's say there's 4 points you need to cover in this. I got 3 of them, and then they had to help me on the last one. It's one like, it's not a bad question, but it's kind of one that you have to have thought about or studied or practiced to get, at least in my opinion, to get right off the bat with only 15 seconds to think about it. But essentially, my answer was, just create a new column and then backfill that column with the existing data. And then you have to change the references in the code from the old column to the new column name. But then the piece... Sorry, my dog's just getting a little scrap over there. The new piece that you have to update, or that I did not include, was you have to update both columns while there are any updates between you changing the references and running the backfill. So that was a good thing for me to understand and be like, yep, that's right, that's how I do it. That's the thing, you would do it that way if you were building it, but being asked on the spot is a bit more challenging, and that's where studying and preparation really has a role, of which I did 0 for this interview. And then the last question was, it was more about like diversity and inclusion type stuff. It was like, how do we lower the barriers to get people from different underrepresented groups in tech? Because, tech's mainly men, let's say white men, Asian men. How do we get other people involved? And so, I don't know, I just gave some opinions and beliefs on that about challenges to access opportunities and things like that. But there's tons of content on that you can go and indulge in by yourself. But yeah, I thought they were fairly decent questions. I think I did fairly decently. I actually did get invited to do the technical next step, which after the interview I thought I had absolutely bombed it because of the way I handled that scalability question. I was like, oh my god, I failed. Because I went kind of blank, my phone went off twice, which is a red flag, and I even said, like, I'm just going to have to skip this question after I gave them as much information as I could. But they saw through it, and I think they just saw it was kind of nerves, and they were willing to give me the benefit of the doubt. And yeah, round 2 is next week, Tuesday. But yeah, it's just some examples of a mid-level role questions, and I'm curious to see what, if any of you are listening to this, would say for the scalability one. What's a good example there? I know there's tons out there, but I'm just curious what people would say off the top of their head, having to think about it for 30 seconds. Because for me, that was the toughest question. Anyway, if you've got any interviews coming up, good luck. And I'd love to know what kind of questions you get on those as well. Always curious to see what people are asked, and I think sharing those questions helps other people prepare mentally a little bit for any interviews that they have coming up themselves. So yeah, have a good one, and from another walk, see you later.